Hello everyone, welcome to Grandma B's Busy Life. I'm Brenda and I am excited to have you here. If you are new here, welcome, I'm glad to have you. This is the first episode of a series I've been wanting to do since I even started thinking about starting a YouTube channel, and it's cooking through history. I'm going to take one decade at a time and talk to you about food that was developed during that time, how people ate, and cook a meal that would have been made during that time. Today, I'm going to talk about 1900 to 1910. This was a big decade for food. In this decade, in 1904, we had the St. Louis World's Fair. The World's Fair happened all over the world, but in 1904, it was here in the United States in St. Louis, Missouri. So much happened. And I'll talk about all of that in just a minute. But first, let's talk about what was going on in our country at this time. The Wright brothers had the first powered, controlled, sustained airplane flight in 1903. In 1905, Albert Einstein published his theory of relativity. Then in 1906, it was the first time that the United States stepped in and had control of our food. And the Pure Food and Drug Act was established. And that was when they first started to control how food was manufactured and distributed. The goal was to improve quality and reduce tampering of food. In 1908, the FBI was established. It wasn't called the FBI at the beginning. It was just part of the Department of Justice. 1 year later, it was named the Bureau of Investigation. And it wasn't until 1935 that it was actually called the Federal Bureau of Investigation. The biggest thing that happened during this time that relates to food is the St. Louis World's Fair Exposition. And this was huge. So much happened this year. As I was doing my research, I found so many things that were developed to be displayed at the World's Fair. A couple of things that really took off because of the World's Fair in St. Louis was Dr. Pepper and Coca-Cola. Now, Coca-Cola was established in 1886. Both Coca-Cola and Dr. Pepper were started as a tonic and were a thick syrup. I've heard that Coca-Cola used to have cocaine in it, and I wasn't sure about that. And I did the research, and from what I found, Coca-Cola did have cocaine in it until 1903. It was used mainly as medicine prior to that, and it became popular in drugstores at the soda counter. Other foods that became popular at this time was Campbell's food. In 1900, Campbell's tomato soup was entered into a competition at Exposition Universelle in Paris. I'm probably saying that wrong, but at the Paris Exposition, and it won an award. And on the front of a tomato soup can, do you see this gold symbol? That's the award they won in 1900. And they put it on the label, and it's still there today. One great thing that was developed during this time is Hershey bars. In 1900 was the first Hershey milk bar. And it wasn't until 1907 when the Hershey Kisses were introduced. Hershey was originally a caramel company. Prior to this point, they didn't have chocolate bars. Another thing that was really popular during this time was a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. It was first introduced in the Boston Culinary Cooking School magazine in 1901, and it was a posh party food. This is for two reasons. It wasn't a real usable peanut butter until about 1922. Prior to that time, it was really a process to get peanut butter. So it was not easy to come by, and it was expensive. And the other thing is sliced bread. You could not buy sliced bread. You know the saying, that's the best thing since sliced bread? This was before that time. We weren't able to buy sliced bread on a regular basis until 1928. So peanut butter and jelly that is so common to us right now was a posh party food in the 1900s. One of the things that was really interesting to me was the development of the brownie. But a brownie wasn't the same in the 1900s. It was first developed by Fannie Farmer in the Boston Cooking School cookbook. And the brownie consisted of no chocolate. It was a nut brown sugar base that was a bar cookie, like a brownie, but it had no chocolate in it. In 1899, 1 year before this decade, somebody in a Maryland community cookbook made the brownies and added cocoa to it. And that's where the brownie we know today started. But in 1906, Fanny Farmer decided to update her brownie recipe in her cookbook to include chocolate. It didn't in the beginning. An interesting start to Jell-O happened in 1904. Pearl and May Waite were in the laxative and cough syrup business. And they were looking for a way to make more money and expand their business. Prior to this point, gelatin was made exclusively from animal bones. If you've seen my bone broth video, you see that gelatin really does come from animal bones. It was a lengthy process and gelatin was not easy to make. Pearl and May Waite were able to get a patent for a powdered gelatin that could be added to water to make a gelatin easily, and also made the gelatin shelf stable because it was in powdered form. Now, they lacked selling skills. They sold Jell-O to the Genesee Food Company, and Genesee Food Company did something brilliant. They put an ad in the Ladies' Home Journal and said, America's favorite dessert, and showed happy families and happy housewives making America's favorite dessert. It was almost unknown, and this ad in Ladies' Home Journal made it take off. Kraft cheese also started in this decade. 1903, James L. Kraft moved from Canada to New York and invested in a cheese company. He actually found himself on a business trip in Chicago and got stranded and was unable to get back to New York. So he decided to buy cheese from local cheesemakers and go around the streets and sell the cheese. That business became so lucrative that his brothers eventually joined him in Chicago and helped him with the business. In 1914, that's the next decade, but in 1914, James L. Kraft opened his own cheese business and started what we know of today as Kraft cheese. What would we do today without grilled cheese from Kraft cheese and tomato soup? I'm grateful. Ice cream cones were developed during this time at the World's Fair. There was a waffle vendor next door to an ice cream vendor, and the ice cream vendor ran out of bowls. And the waffle vendor said, hey, let's try this. And he rolled the waffle up into a cone, and that's how the ice cream cone was developed. Another thing that came from that World's Fair was French's mustard. French's mustard was developed to display at the World's Fair, and they strategically placed themselves next to a hot dog vendor. And when people would buy a hot dog, they would offer them French's mustard. And that's how the hot dog and mustard came together, was at that World's Fair. So what might have someone eaten in the 1900s? The main dinner that people would eat was a slice of meat and some boiled potatoes. It was the staple of the time. They also ate a lot of different meat that we don't eat on a regular basis now. I found recipes in Fanny Farmer's cookbook for all kinds of animals. And some of the names of the animals I didn't even recognize. Today we pretty much eat beef, pork, and chicken. And they ate all of the meat that was available to them. They were very resourceful with what they had. So today I'm going to bake a brownie, a 1900s brownie with no chocolate, and give it a taste and see what it's like. Okay, so the recipe for brownies calls for 1/3 cup butter, and I don't know if it's supposed to be melted or softened. All of the recipes I found were not very descriptive. Apparently people knew how to bake better than we do today. And it calls for 1/3 cup powdered sugar, 1/3 of cup butter, and 1/3 of cup powdered sugar. Now, I don't know if powdered sugar in 1900 was the same as powdered sugar is today, but I'm gonna go with all I know of powdered sugar. I'm gonna hand mix it because I'm sure they did not have mixers at the time. And I wanna try to make it as authentic as possible, although I'm not going to start a wood fire oven. And it calls for 1/3 cup of Puerto Rico molasses. All I have is grandma's molasses, so that's what we're gonna use. Oh, this stuff smells so good. I love molasses. The entire directions say, mix the ingredients in order given, bake in a small, shallow, fancy cake tin, garnish top of each cake with 1/2 pecan. Okay, fancy cake tins, I don't have any. The next ingredient is 1 egg, whisked up first. I'm gonna mix it up here first before I put it into the mixture. And 1 egg is about 1/3 cup too, so it's interesting that all of these ingredients are about the same amount. 1/3 cup butter, 1/3 cup powdered sugar, 1/3 cup molasses, an egg. The next one's interesting. It calls for 7/8 cup of flour. Why 7/8? Was that extra eighth just too much? I don't know. Very precise. I've still got some butter chunks in here too. I hope that's not going to be a problem. We'll see. So I measured out my flour. I used my little 1/8 measuring cup and got exactly 7/8. But you could use 1 cup and take 2 tablespoons out, because 2 tablespoons is 1/8 cup. The last ingredient is 1 cup of pecan meat cut in pieces. I have pecan pieces that were already chopped when I bought them. That's what I'm going to use. Okay, 1 cup of pecan pieces. It's interesting to me that this recipe has no leavening. There's no baking soda, no baking powder. I don't know how this is going to turn out. It smells really good. It kind of smells like gingerbread because of the molasses, but it doesn't have that cinnamon ginger flavor. Look at the nuts in there, how thick that is. It's really a thick batter. Now, the recipe does not say what temperature or how long, because apparently they knew that already. It just says fancy cake tin. That's as fancy as we're getting today. I don't know what they did to make things not stick in the 1900s, but I'm gonna use my spray. Is that cheating? I'm cheating. I'm betting they greased it with some lard. But look how easy that is, right? All right, I'm gonna put this in. I'm gonna set my oven to 350, because I noticed some of the recipes from this time period either said bake or bake in a hot oven. I'm assuming 400-ish is a hot oven, and a moderate. Some of the recipes said moderate and some just say bake. So I'm thinking 350 is probably moderate, 400 is probably hot. I don't know. Can you see why they're called brownies? They're very, very brown. All right, let's see what happens. I'm gonna bake them at 350 and I'll just watch. I'll come back and let you know how long it took. So I was thinking about the instructions that were given to bake it in fancy cake tins. I'll bet it was small cake tins, because it said to put 1/2 pecan on each cake. Clearly I don't know what I'm doing in the 1900s. So here's what it looks like. It baked for 12 minutes and it looks delicious. It doesn't really smell like much. I thought it would smell like molasses, and it just doesn't smell like much. So let's give it a taste. So I'm gonna cut me a little piece here. I haven't tried it, so you'll get to see my reaction, real reaction here. Okay, so it's dense like a brownie, but it feels very cakey, not chewy like a brownie. Let's try it. It's hard to describe. It's not like anything I'm used to. It tastes like gingerbread with no ginger, no cinnamon. So the texture is really good. Feels like a cakey brownie. and it just tastes like pecans. It doesn't have a lot of flavor. I thought that molasses would bring in a real deep, rich flavor, and it just doesn't. It's okay. I can see why it needs chocolate though. I don't know. It was fun to try it though because it had very little instructions and I didn't have a lot to go on, but it was fun to try it. So thank you so much for joining me and sticking through to the end. If you enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up, and if you haven't subscribed, please consider subscribing. I am trying to get to 100 subscribers by the end of March. Thank you for joining me. Have a great day, and I'll see you again soon.